Hi, I'm Lee Strahan, and I want to do a short video tackling one of the questions, the biggest questions that everybody has about the conflict in Ukraine. Who's winning? That's a real basic question. Who's winning, Ukraine or Russia? And not only am I going to go into some specifics on that in this video and show that I think Russia is clearly winning, and that any claims Ukraine is winning are lies. I'm going to go through and I think prove that to you. But not only that, I'm going to talk about the Gonzalo-Lira-Scott Ritter dispute and a little bit. And I'm going to lay out how you can determine what the concept of victory is. The concept of victory in war is an important one. And it's one of those concepts that is a tool of warfare. It's a propaganda tool of warfare. And in fact, the concept of victory is a concept of political propaganda warfare. What you do is you determine the other side's goals for victory, and then you say they haven't met them. But that's an invalid way to do it. And let me explain. And I'm going to use the concept in your personal life. Forget nations for a second. If I determine my success or your success, what's the proper way to do that? Well, there are some objective standards. For instance, if my goal for success, whatever my goals are, if I'm dead, I have not succeeded objectively, right? Dead is objectively lost. But other than that, the rule here is the person or country has to define their own standards for success or victory. You can't let someone else define the standards for victory. And I'm going to go into details with Ukraine and Russia and show that by their own standards, I'm going to talk about stuff in the news now, Ukraine is clearly losing and Russia is clearly winning. But to fill out the point I'm making, let's say you hate me, and you say Lee's a failure, and someone says to you, I don't know much, why do you say that? And you can go, he has not succeeded as a dentist. He has no dental practice. He's taken no dental education. He's a lousy dentist. He's a loser. That's not fair, because I never said my goal was to be a dentist, right? For instance, I had a stroke a few weeks ago. My goal, self-stated, has been to improve my speech. That's the standard, a goal that I set for myself. So if my speech is better today than it was a few weeks ago, I am closer on the spectrum to success, because I set the standard. Now, you can disagree that it's a good standard, but it's the person's standards, and everybody has a right to their own standards. So what were the goals of Ukraine and Russia at the outset of the war? What you notice is the media plays this trick all the time. The media has lots of stories that Russia's failing in the war. And they say, for instance, they didn't take Kyiv. Well, Russia's goal was not to take Kyiv. That was never their goal. And what we're helped by in this is Russia and Ukraine have stated some goals for themselves very clearly. An example of Russia's clearly stated goals are denazification, demilitarization, but it was not taking Kyiv. It was taking Donbass. They stated that as a goal. And according to that goal, how's Russia doing? Well, according to Ukraine, there's a new report today. Ukraine is saying that Donbass is going very badly for them. So militarily, Russia, by both sides' standards, is going badly for Ukraine, they admit, and it's going well for Russia. They're about to retake Donbass and be firmly in control of it. So according to that goal, you'd have to say Russia's successful. Now, what were goals of Ukraine? Because they had some clearly stated goals too. One clearly stated goal of Ukraine was they wanted Russia to return Crimean lands, and therefore the citizens of Crimea would no longer be citizens of Russia, but they would be citizens of Ukraine. How are they doing? You see, defining the goal makes the question easier to answer objectively. By any standard, Ukraine has failed. They have not retaken 1 inch of Crimea. Not one former Crimean citizen is now a citizen of Ukraine. And I would in fact argue that Russia's gone beyond their goals. Not only is Crimea still Russian territory, but also by retaking the Ukrainian city of Kherson, by taking it over and being firmly in charge there. And when I say firmly in charge, objectively, Kherson was a city in Ukraine, and it's near a major river. And the reason Kherson's important to Crimea is that Ukraine was cutting off water to Crimea and making the people's lives and industry and agriculture bad. Russia's retaking Kherson. Forgive me, they've taken it. I keep saying retaken. They never lost it. And since they've been in charge of Kherson, the ruble is the currency, the people speak Russian, and Russia's paying pensions for people. Clearly, Russia is in control of Kherson. And that's a victory for Crimea. But it's a loss by any standard. In fact, in general, if the goal was to have Russia not take what were Ukrainian lands in 2013, there's no way in which Ukraine has won an inch. Russia controls more. Now I told you to talk about the Gonzalo-Scott Ritter battle. And I'm not going to get into the personal aspects. I don't know Gonzalo Ritter, although I like his work. And I know Scott. He's been a guest on my radio show frequently. And I like Scott, his work, and I like him personally. But I think there's a factual dispute between Gonzalo and Scott that's largely a result of ill-defined goals. The personal stuff that's gone on, I wish I'd stop. And mostly Gonzalo. Scott has kept it businesslike. Gonzalo's done some stuff where he said, this is his goal, Scott's. And that's never a good idea unless you have hard proof of it. Where I disagree with Scott is he's asked the question, Russia's goal was denazifying and demilitarizing. And have they succeeded? He says, to answer his own question, clearly no. I disagree with Scott partially. Let me explain what I mean by partially. I do not think Russia's goal was denazifying and demilitarizing all of Ukraine. I think that is an incorrectly defined goal. So by that standard, they've not succeeded, and they're not close to succeeding. But if their goal was denazifying and demilitarizing Donbas, just Donbas, and the area above Crimea, Kherson, Mariupol, Odessa, Russia, victory, if you're defining it right, victory is at hand. Clearly in Mariupol, they've demilitarized it and denazified it, right? I think it's hard to argue. Their goal was not, I don't think, and should not have been, denazifying Lviv. That'd be a big goal, and I think impossible to achieve for Russia. That's going back to World War II, a heavily Nazi-influenced area. But the other areas were more balanced. And the goal of having the Nazi be a political force in Donbass is clearly at hand. Ukraine is admitted Donbass is going badly for them. And clearly, victory is at hand. Not there yet, but close. Who can say? It could be a few days or it could be a few weeks. But clearly, the Russian goal of denazifying and demilitarizing that area is at hand. The current battles going on in Liman, for instance, on Ukraine, show that. So that handles some of the dispute between Scott and Gonzalo. I think they're both right. It's not a contradiction. Both of them are right. And I wish if they can't work together, at least stop insulting each other and misstating the goals, because it's not helping. And feel free to ignore my advice. But I don't want anyone out there. This is why I've tried to not make it worse. I'm not insulting either person. I think they're both valuable people and valuable analysts. And I like them both, and I hope it works out. But I want to be clear on the factual issue. Russian victory, properly defined, is at hand. And even Ukraine, I'm letting Ukraine use their own standards. One goal of theirs was to bring Crimea back as part of Ukraine. Is there anybody who in any way can argue Ukraine's goal of Russia out of Crimea has succeeded? Have they taken, can you point to 1 square inch of a beach somewhere in Sebastopol that's clearly Ukrainian? I mean, that's got a gerbil on it. 1 inch. And those Ukrainian Nazi gerbils are a real problem. But by no standard. You see the value, and why I talked at the beginning, of defining standards. And don't let the other side define your standard. I'm saying repatriating Crimea was Ukraine's goal because they've said it. For instance, one of the West's goal is regime change for Vladimir Putin. And they've stated it. Numerous people, Joe Manchin recently stated, the goal is regime change. Putin no longer in charge of Russia. They have succeeded not at all. And everything they're doing is bringing them further from their goal. Vladimir Putin is still immensely popular in Russia. And there's no sign of a popular revolt. So anyway, I want to give you an update on certain things and a framework that you can look at it. When someone asks you who's winning in Ukraine, ask them, what do you mean? With what stated goal? And Russia's been pretty good at stating its goals. And admittedly, they've changed overall a little bit because Russia's realized that parts of Ukraine, the Donbass, can never find peace if they are part of Ukraine. So that's not a goal of theirs anymore. But Kiev, they're not trying to take or occupy. So when someone asks you who's winning, make sure you agree on what winning is. Till next time, I'm Lee Stranahan. Bye-bye.